trauma, right? And that can cause PTSD.
Yeah.
If someone has, and the reality of it is, I think the statistics are in the U.S., 80% of us that grew up between like the 70s, that were born between the 70s and the 80s, right, were abused.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of that out there. My thing is, you have to get therapy. You have to find that safe space to talk about that, because there's a lot there when you are dealing with abuse and when you feel that intrusion, your defense mechanisms kind of rise up and you're ready to go. So it's very important for someone to get the help they need if they have been abused. And listen, I am a big proponent of therapy, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the US, in Black families, therapy was not looked good at. It was not a positive light shown on it. It was very, like, oh my God, are you crazy?
It's crazy as therapy.
And I think that is one of the problems that we face as a community.
Negative,
that we look at, we have this kind of, where they say that the British have got a stiff upper lip. No, Black people have got a stiff upper lip, because we won't even go to the doctors if you're feeling ill, because no man, people can't know me sick. Yep. And then the next week we'll be dead, and then we'll be cussing saying, "Oh, we're dead, lad. We should have gone doctor." We will, it's very hard for our community, and I suppose we're better now, but our community isn't a community that's ever opened up to others within the community, because it's like, go chat your business. No matter tell them nothing. You know what I mean? We've always had that kind of whisper, sniper. You know what I mean? So it's been hard. A lot of Black people have been alone. They've actually been alone. Although on the surface you think, man, these people are fine. They actually haven't had someone they can actually talk to, because they haven't had the inner strength to be able to say the words they want to say, or even the language, and the words. So. Yeah, I think it's a hard thing, man. And I think therapy, like you say, back in the day would have been let's be honest, if you would have said back in the 70s, oh, I'm going to see a therapist, the people would be saying, oh, we're going to get you locked up and committed. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of stigma around it as well. It's only now that mental health is being spoken about in terms of physical health, and people appreciate that. Some people need to talk. They need to, get things out. So, real tough area, man. So
I think that's another thing you address, Miss Smalls, Miss Smalls, in your book about trustworthiness. And I think that's not exclusive to finding women or girls in your circle. I think that's everything, especially in the Black community. We don't really trust. That's basically what Nigel was saying.
Jim Crow laws, man.
Yeah, But that's an aspect of slavery, right? Imagine you're on the auction block and you're compared to this person and so on, and you're, they're dividing up who's going to work outside, who's going to work inside. All of those things, they're pitting us together. So it programs you. I've got to be better than this one. I've got to, I've got to pull this one down, and so on and so forth. So. I'm not a big reparations person. I don't believe, I'm not supportive of the whole reparations thing, just because I know it's not going to happen. But if there was anything I would stand behind, I believe every Black American in this country that's alive needs mental health services. And I think that's the one thing America should give us, because slavery in and of itself was traumatic, right?
Yeah, sure.
Many of us still have PTSD because slavery changed our DNA.
Yeah.
And so many of us are still dealing with those effects. So you add slavery, then think about it. The civil rights era, right? There are still people. My mother is a civil rights person. She was born and alive. She was born in the late 50s. So she was alive and well. She remembers going to the first integrated school in our city and how that felt and being looked down upon. So I think a lot of us can benefit from therapy. And I think that should be the one thing that we get is some type of counseling and therapy support.
I feel so. And the thing is, I mean, growing up, and it's bad to say now, but I heard it in my own family, where you see, when I was growing up, I just saw a black man as my brother, whether they were black African, black Ethiopian, black Jamaican, English, whatever. But growing up, I used to hear my own people cuss a man over there because he's too dark. Or that man there is from Barbados, so he yams monkey. Or that them African man, they fling spear. And you think, well, hold on a second, these are all black people. How can you be, when the white man hates all of us, you're even saying them things in they weren't being said in a positive way. And obviously I had to get older to understand that this is ingrained, where they would separate the lighter from the darker, where they would say, well, you can work in the house, but there's no chance you ever come in the house because you're too black, where they would select the bull who they wanted to kind of, we were used like cattle, man. We were like cattle. You see how like they breed bull and cow and steak. We were like cattle. Absolutely. So deep stuff. And I think, and I don't really want to going back to like the white privilege thing. When you're hearing people say, "Oh, all lives matter," for me, those are the ones who need to understand. We ain't talking about this one guy dying. We're talking about 300 years. It's 300 years.
Or even.
Well, 400 years. And you're saying, oh, well, get over it, all lives matter. I tell you what, this is why everyone I speak to now who says anything, I say, go and read Jim Crow laws and watch 13th, and then come back to me and then we'll talk. Because if you don't read those two things, you don't know. You'll never, ever get it.
Just one question again, Mr. Smalls. I've got questions in it. Every time I listen to you guys, I know I can hear questions. Do you think that, like, obviously, white people also suffer from the trauma of racism? And I know they dished it out, but it could be that, like, especially the older ones, they're probably like, they feel guilt, white guilt, I guess is what they call it. Do you think they need to go and see a therapist as well about maybe understanding what they did, or at least their forefathers did? Because, like you said, your mom was born in the 50s, which means the people who were born in that era too were still pretty much like...
They're in power, mate, in the Congress House.
Well, yeah, they are. That's another thing. Wouldn't it be time to get someone in president position not from that era? I ain't the smartest guy here, but
that's what needs to happen.
This would make sense. Get someone who's born like in the 80s or the 70s.
It's the children born last year, the children born this year, the children born next year who will create the diversity in the power corridors of America. Because there's too much there's so many people being born out of color who are going on to great things. We've got a nation of leaders just waiting to come out, and they're coming into a diverse world. They've got to get into, once they start getting into those houses of power and they can start influencing, it will happen. Won't happen in my generation. I'll be an old man, but it will happen. Like when you watch Star Trek and everyone's like, the man, the black man's talking to the green man man's talking to the man with the big head, the man with the big head's talking to the man with the long face. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, yeah, man, no one even flinches. You're talking past our generation. Or aliens have got to come first, and then they'll be like, "Bloody hell, we better stick together."
Well, that it's interesting that you say that, because the whole thought is, once the generation we call baby boomers, right? Those are the folks that are like our parents' age.
Yeah.
The thought is, once the baby boomers die, then the world will be or our country, I should say, will be a little more less racist, I guess. But you also got to take into account that the baby boomers are raising children too.
Yeah, they're passing it on.
And especially those that are in the, Mississippi and those southern states, Mississippi, Alabama. But I wanted to address another point that you had made. Gosh, what was? I wanted to share this with you guys. So I'm taking a class on trauma, right? And the instructor, who's a white male, who's from the state of West Virginia, which is one of those southern states. Yeah. He starts off by sharing that he is a racist.
Okay, that's powerful.
And he says he's a product of the environment that he was raised in. His parents raised him that way. West Virginia is very racist and so on. but he says his goal in life is to be effective and to treat everybody with love and kindness. So he's constantly having to check that emotion or check his thoughts. And that's one of the things. So you ask, do I feel our white counterparts need therapy? Yeah, absolutely. Because, once you're in therapy, it gives you self-awareness. So someone can say, I'm not racist. But if you're hiring and there's, two candidates, a black and a white, who are you going to choose? Yeah. If everything else is equal, you just automatically choose the white candidate because, you feel like, oh, well, we can go have beers and so on. You just made a biased decision, right? Yeah. But it's checking that, checking that thought, that emotion. That's what going to therapy gives you is you're exposed to it and you're getting that self-awareness. And then once you get that self-awareness, you get that ability to regulate yourself, to say, so when that thought comes, okay, choose the white candidate. You can say, nope, I'm not going to choose the white candidate. I'm going to look at them both fairly and equally and make a decision purely based on performance.
Yeah.
Cool. Just the last question. The Black Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds. I mentioned that to my wife, that was the title of the book. And she was like, but actually you could probably put that to everybody. Actually, that would fit to white girls, Indian girls, Asian, So would it be maybe a marketing thing for you where you could say, okay, I'm going to remarket the book as the Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds too?
I wanted to make this specifically for my Black girls because
they need some stuff,
well, our origins are different, right? Our trauma comes from different areas, right? And I wanted to address my white girls and my Black girls first, but I have white friends who've read the book and they said, there was a lot of it that they could completely relate to. I talk about, all across all colors, we've had absent fathers. And even though, and I mentioned in the book, even though your father may be there in your house, it doesn't mean he's a present father, right? So, all of us can relate to that. All of us can relate to making poor dating decisions, right? So there are some things that are universal, but our origins, the where the trauma comes from, is what makes it a little bit different. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm listening to you say being a present father, and then I'll start reflecting on myself, thinking to myself, I'm a present father. Jesus. I do try, and especially my daughter, because I found that our relationship's a little bit more different. I don't know how many people would relate to what I'm about to say, but when my daughter was born, I didn't really have that connection with her. The mom and her had the immediate bonding. But me, I was kind of like, okay, who's this stranger sort of thing. Whereas when I had my son, there was an instant connection. It was like, bam. And even my last daughter, who I actually birthed, there was an instant connection. So I was wondering what's going on. So now I try and make a little bit effort because the relationships continue that way, really. We don't really have too much going on. It seems like
I think don't be so hard on yourself because you gotta remember, mate, you've gone from the known to the unknown, and your first child, I think all of your worry about anything going right, that's all there, that's all present to you. And you got to remember that even though you didn't carry the baby, you would still have been carrying some of the stress. And as a man, men are like, once the stress is gone, it's like, why? Let me start myself out first, and you know what I mean? So don't be so hard on yourself. You've got a relationship with your daughter. You probably feel it's different, and you're probably basing it on how you felt then.
Yeah, but the thing is, I also feel like she just naturally gravitates towards her mom and her grandma and stuff like this. But to me, it's kind of like I'm an afterthought. So it's not, I don't know if it's actually, I think it really is like that. So that, like I said, I'm trying now to get involved in the piano and do stuff that I like to do.
Let me ask you a question. Does she still call you Wayne or Dad?
There you go. See, she still calls me Wayne, and not Dad.
And mate, I ain't being funny. What? Not being funny. You ain't her friend.